Do you know what happens every time you plug a media device into your Windows box? It could be a disaster for forensics if you don't disable auto-mounting and enable the read-only mode. In this video, we will look at how to disable the auto-mounting feature on a Windows machine. Please help me out by hitting the subscribe button so I can live it up. By default, Windows will automatically mount the file system for a new basic or dynamic volume when it's added to a system, and then Windows assigns a drive letter to that volume. This is a great feature for the everyday Windows user because they expect to be able to see the thumb drive or external hard drive that they attach to the system. But for the forensic examiners, this could be a disaster. If the device you are connecting is original evidence, Windows can make alterations on that device via timestamp updates. If you are browsing through the folders, you can accidentally alter or delete or add files, and antivirus programs may try to quarantine files found on your original evidence. Ideally, you would have a hardware write blocker, which will prevent these events from happening. But you may not always have the appropriate hardware write blocker available. For example, if you have a SCSI or SAS drive, you may not have those specific write blockers, or just any write blocker available. You may be doing 7 drives at one time and you only have 6 write blockers. So here are some steps you can take to do the best you can with what you got. I'm going to be using the command line. So let's launch command prompt by left-clicking on the Windows Start button, then typing in CMD, and then select the command prompt, Run as Administrator. This is because some of the information we want to access is restricted from a normal user. So once the user account control panel comes up, go ahead and click Yes to allow the app to make changes on your device. And then once you get your command prompt, let's go ahead and run regedit so that we can see what's going on with some of these utilities. Another tool we're going to be using to help us see what's going on is the disk management tool. So let's bring that up by right-clicking on the Windows Start button and then select Disk Management. And we can see that we currently only have the internal hard drive mounted as C:. And once we're in regedit, let's take a look at this key named hkey_local_machine \system \current control set \services \mountmgr. And I'm looking for the field named no auto mount, which actually does not exist at this time, but that's okay. We will come back to that. Now let's plug an external USB hard drive into our system. Notice in disk management, my drive was automatically recognized and assigned the letter D:. This is the default behavior of Windows, which is great for the normal user, but not for us forensic examiners. So I'm going to go ahead and eject that drive. So let's take a look at our first method of disabling auto mount, which is with the mountvol command, mount volume. From the command prompt, type mountvol/n to disable auto mount. You can think of n as no, so no to turn off auto mount. Now let's go back to the regedit window and hit F5 for refresh, or just go to the menu and hit refresh. Notice that there is a new item on the list named no auto mount, right? And then it's a regular double word with a value of 1. This is the registry key that tracks whether new basic volumes will be auto-mounted when encountered by Windows. And the value of 1 means you want to disable auto mount, right? No auto mount. And 0 means you want to enable the auto mount. I'm going to go ahead and view another key named hkey_local_machine \system \mounted devices. This key here keeps track of all of the mounted devices and their associated drive letters. And as you can see here, we can see the C drive and the D drive. So now what we're going to do is we're going to type into the command prompt mountvol/r for remove. So that's supposed to remove all of the drives that are not connected to the system. So now let's go back into the regedit window and hit F5 for refresh. Notice that the list of mounted devices is now cleaned out, right, except for what's currently mounted, which is the C drive. We need to clear this list, otherwise any drives which are on this list will be auto-mounted regardless of the no auto-mount setting. Now let's plug our external hard drive back in and see what happens. So now if we look at disk management, it recognizes the external drive as disk 1, and it sees the 2 partitions, but neither partition is auto-mounted. Success! If you want to re-enable auto-mounting, then type mountvol/E, and this will enable the auto-mount. So if we go back to the regedit window and hit F5 to refresh on the mount MGR field, we notice that the no auto-mount now has a value of 0. So basically the way you look at it is that there is a double negative, right? The no auto-mount and then a 0. So a double negative makes a positive, which means now we have auto-mount re-enabled. So if I plug the external hard drive back in, you can see in the disk management that it is assigned the letter D automatically. And when we're done here, I'm going to go ahead and eject the D drive in preparation for the next part. Now let's take a look at a second method to disable auto-mount. We are going to use the diskpart utility. From the command prompt, let's go ahead and type diskpart. And now notice the change in prompt to start with the words diskpart to distinguish it from the standard command prompt. So we know we are in a separate program. Here we can check on the automount status by typing just the word automount. And since automount is currently enabled, and we see here from the output that automount is enabled. And since it's already enabled, let's go ahead and disable it with adding the word disable after automount. So now we can see that the system thinks the automount is disabled. We can verify this action by looking at the regedit window at the mount MGR key. And now I'm going to go ahead and clear the mount devices key by specifying the scrub option to automount. So we type automount scrub. And now if we go back to regedit, we can verify this by looking at the mount devices key and doing a refresh. And now we see that the D drive is not there. We only see the C drive. So let's go ahead and plug in an external USB hard drive. And within disk management, it automatically recognizes the external drive as disk 1 and sees the 2 partitions, but neither partition is auto-mounted. Success again. So I'm going to go ahead and eject that drive by clicking down here to the USB. And then now if we want to re-enable auto-mounting, we can just specify the enabled option to auto-mount by typing auto-mount enable. And if we go back to the regedit window and take a look at that key for the mount manager, we see that now the no auto-mount has a value of 0, right? Which means auto-mount is re-enabled. So if I plug the external drive back into the system, once again, we see in Disk Manager that it automatically assigns it a letter D. So I'm going to go ahead and eject the external drive once again in preparation for the next section. The third method we're going to look at for setting your system up to disable auto-mounting is by just changing the registry keys that we looked at before. Instead of using the mountvol or diskpart programs, we're now going to directly set and clear the values in the keys and achieve the no auto-mounting status. So let's go ahead and go to regedit, and then we're going to look at the key for mount MGR. And in a normal case, you may not have a value in here called no auto mount, right? And what we can do, if that's the case, is that you can create one by right-clicking on the right side of the regedit window, then select new, and then a double word, which is a 32-bit value. We're going to rename that new item to be named no auto mount, and then we're going to double-click on the name, and then give it a value of 1. So next thing we need to do is clear out the entry in the mount devices key. So I have this in my favorites here. So I'm going to go to this particular entry and then select the devices that I don't want to auto mount, right, which is that D drive, and go ahead and just right click and delete it. So now this essentially flushes the mount devices key. And at this point, we need to reboot our system for the auto mount to be disabled. So let's go ahead and reboot the system. And once it comes back in, we're gonna go ahead and relaunch the registry editor and disk management, just to make sure things are what we set it to be, right? So the MGR is set to a 1 for no auto mount, and then the mount devices key is still cleared from that D device. And now when we plug in our external hard drive, we see in disk management that it's recognizing the raw device, but it does not assign it a drive letter. So success for the third time. So one thing to note is that none of these techniques work with a USB thumb drive, which are classified as removable devices as opposed to basic disks. And these removable devices will be auto-mounted regardless of the settings in the registry or in mountvol or diskpart. So just be careful that the techniques that we looked at in this video only apply to hard drives or what's known as basic disks, and not to removable devices, which are thumb drives. For more information on hardware write blockers, watch this video. For more Windows forensic related videos, make sure you watch these videos here. Thanks for your time, and see you again.